So anyway, today's topic is four pathways to spiritual life, four pathways of spiritual life. So there's a particular reason why there are four basic or main pathways. You have all heard the word yoga. Yoga means communion in its very simple terms. The most universal definition of yoga. Yoga has many connotations. People understand yoga by the word yoga. It can mean physical exercises, it can mean so many breathing exercises, all form part of yoga. That is the popular word yoga. But in the spiritual context, in the context of Ramakrishna Vivekananda, yoga word means it's any means using the faculties of the mind to reach the ultimate truth or God. That is the simplest definition. Anything that joins you to that universal truth through the medium of the mind. So we have to remember, mind is an instrument for everything that we do, the skills that we acquire, the professions that we pursue, the spiritual practices that we do. It all boils down to training of the mind. So the training of the mind has many aspects, and each aspect of the mind, if trained properly, scientifically, or through the process of what is known as yoga, because yoga is a very scientific process to approach the subject of religion, or more specifically spirituality. So if we have to understand spirituality as Ramakrishna Vivekananda propounded or explained it in the light of the universal teachings of Vedanta, we come to this unique concept of four yogas, which correspond to the four faculties of the mind. So Western psychology speaks of three faculties. Broadly speaking, if you read any book on psychology, they speak of three basic faculties of the mind: thinking, feeling, and willing. These are the three powers which we use to acquire any skill, whether it's in the secular world or if we want spiritual progress, any kind of progress. We need to develop these three faculties of the mind. The analytical or rational faculty, which is known as thinking, or that is cognition. Cognition is one faculty which has been universally accepted by psychologists, both of the East and the West. Cognition is very important because it helps you to process the information that the brain, which is an organ for the mind, which is not the mind, it's one of the organs, like our eyes, ears. Vedanta speaks of 10 organs, and Vedanta also speaks of an 11th organ, which is the brain, which processes the inputs through all these sense organs, the eyes, the smell, the taste. So there are a lot of inputs, information coming to the central processing unit known as brain, which according to Vedanta is another sense organ. So some texts of Vedanta say that we have 11 sense organs. Mind is far superior because it processes all the different inputs of different sense organs and gives a meaning to that information, tries to bring some sense into that. So that faculty, which uses reason to process the information, because most of the animals, though they have this faculty of reasoning, they use instinct more than reason. For them to survive, instinct is enough. Whereas as the human being advances, even among the human beings there are gradations depending on how you use your sensory input to process the information in a very rational, well-informed way and react. So the more developed your rational or analytical capacity or cognitive capacity, the more rational you are and the more progress you make in any field of development. It's not necessary that Only spirituality uses this faculty. In fact, to develop all the so-called academic skills, we are using cognition or reason or our analytical capacity to a very large extent. And spirituality is no exception, because you need this rational faculty even to develop spirituality. Though spirituality, people think you don't need reason, mere faith is enough. Of course, some religions believe that you don't have to reason because God is beyond reasoning. There are so many arguments presented that you don't need reasoning. If you are a man of faith, if you are a simple person having absolutely no analytical faculty, and you are just a man of faith, a simple man of faith, you can just be equally religious or equally spiritual like all other people. Yes, that's true. Faith can lead you. Most of the religious pursuits are based on faith, sometimes dogmatic faith, sometimes blind faith. But there is this element of rationality which is there in every religion. Whether you call it theology, whether you give it any other name, you need to analyze what the prophets have said in your own way, in your own logical way. Try to understand what these great world teachers, founders of different religions, different faiths, different spiritual leaders, process the information logically, analytically, rationally, because anything that you do which does not have reason as a basis cannot be said to be a scientific approach to any subject. And spirituality, for the first time, Sri Ramakrishna, of course, as desired by Swami Vivekananda, who approached him with a very absolutely rational mind, because he was not a person who would take things and because he was asked to. Pure faith was not what he wanted. He wanted to analyze everything rationally, because he was educated under the modern system of education, where you have to reason out everything. If it satisfies reason, then truth is said to have been established. It has to satisfy reason, it has to satisfy experimental verification. Of course, the systems change. In physics, you have one system of experimental verification. In chemistry, you use some other system. But in spirituality also, you need what is popularly understood or termed as yoga, which is a scientific approach to spiritual life. It is something like in Vedanta and yoga, how they are connected. Of course, there is a practical aspect of Vedanta as well. But very popularly, in a very simple, in simple terms, if we have to explain, yoga is what technology is to science, pure science. We have pure sciences, we have applied sciences. And applied sciences or technology or pure sciences, though they are distinct, they are connected to each other. Based on the theories of pure science and based on experimental verifications of the same, we apply it in our day-to-day use so that it becomes meaningful and its validity is established. That is done through technology. So whether it's Newton's law or whether it's the laws of quantum physics, everywhere we find that in the if we really follow, if we are wedded to scientific temper, we will always try to find out whether the theories that we propose have been experimentally verified in whichever system it works, whether it's physics, whether it's chemistry, or any other scientific subject. So for the first time in this scientific age, which became popular the early 19th century or 20th century, it was Ramakrishna Vivekananda who came with a message suited to this age where scientific temper was respected. And religions which were not based, or religious pursuits or religious theories which were not based on this scientific temper or scientific spirit, were rejected outright. So that's why we see most of the intellectuals just discarded religion without even trying to find out whether these spiritual truths can be verified in the same using the same process as scientists use in physical sciences and other sciences. So science became very popular, and all the religions based on dogmas, on just blind faith or mere faith, they started crumbling and people lost faith. Even today, if you see, more than 40% of the people in England claim that they are atheists. They don't owe their allegiance to any particular religion or religious faith, because even now the idea is that religion has to be based on some kind of faith. Either you are born into your religion and you just blindly follow it because your earlier generations followed them, or you try to satisfy your mind that this is the religion or this is the spirituality that I find comfortable and I practice it. So there is a choice. You have a lot of options now, and people choose one religion or the other, one spiritual path or the other, and some decide not to follow. And at least in England it is 40% who say that we don't need religion for surviving in this world. We don't need spirituality. We are happy with not owing our allegiance to any particular religion. We are just atheists. So there are so many popular books, The God Delusion. Even there were people like Richard Dawkins who said, well, the idea of God may after all be an illusion unless you prove it. Many scientific theories have been rejected. At least the scientists are very truthful. If they find something does not satisfy reason, they just dump it. They said this cannot be proved. If you prove it, then we'll accept it. So they are wedded to truth, and the spirit is very good and it needs to be applied to religion. So that is why long ago, when the philosophy of Vedanta was over a period of several thousand years, not 100 years, several thousand years, the Vedas evolved into what is, or you may say the rishis evolved a system of philosophy or system of, you may say, religion or spirituality, which they called as Vedanta. But simultaneously, there was, of course, Vedanta also is practical in a way. There are many systems or methods used in the system of Vedanta which can be experimentally verified in one's own life. The Upanishads, for example, there are meditations, there are many things in the Vedas or Vedanta which are not only universal but also very practical. But you have to find out those ideas from the vast literature of Vedas. But independently, or you may say inspired by Vedanta, an independent system of thought developed, and Patanjali is a well-known proponent of that. He is not the founder of yoga, mind you. He was the one who classified all the thoughts which were extant at that time on yoga. So though he is termed as, he is described as the founder of the yoga philosophy, there were many who preceded him. In fact, they say even what Buddha taught was nothing but yoga, because it deals with the science of the mind. Though Buddhism does not believe in the existence of a personal God or even God, they think our mind, the path that Buddha discovered, the Eightfold Path, which is kind of yoga, what Patanjali terms as yoga, was enough to reach the highest truth. You don't need a God to help you in this. It's only through self-effort and by the practice of strict disciplines, which he termed as Ashtanga Yoga, not Ashtanga Yoga, the Eightfold Path to Truth, but Patanjali, that's why his path also is known as Ashtanga Yoga, that is the eightfold path, starting with Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, all the different aspects of yoga which have become popular. In fact, the first four systems have become popular rather than the other aspects of yoga, the higher aspects of yoga, because they are more difficult. And the first four steps of yoga, of which asana has become popular all over the world, because that is the easiest. People can understand what that yoga is, they can understand, or they can even see the benefits of asana. They can also see the benefits of pranayama, which is one of the 8 steps of yoga, and the higher faculties that are developed, that help you to develop spirituality, are very often ignored or not pursued because they are difficult. The easier steps, the first 4 steps of the Ashtanga Yoga, become more popular. So this is as far as the word yoga, which enables you, which is a technology based on the philosophy of Vedanta or Vedas, which teach you how to reach the ultimate truth through a systematic approach of control of the mind. So that is where we come to the 4 pathways to truth. The 4 pathways that I mentioned represent 4 yogas. And again, these 4 yogas, each of these yogas depend on one particular faculty of the mind. So we started with reason, rationality, cognition, which Western psychology says is a very important aspect which distinguishes us from animals. We are human beings, more evolved than animals because of our rational capacity to understand, interpret data, and use it for a good purpose. So that is what cognition does. The more the cognitive faculties are developed in a person, the more rational he is, the more well-informed decisions he makes, the better choices he makes in life. So one faculty of the mind, which is cognition, is taken care by one of the yogas, which is known as Jnana Yoga. I'll come to that later, because these 4 pathways are equally important. Just as all the 4 faculties of the mind are equally important, at least in Indian psychology. In Western psychology, they speak of only 3 faculties. The second faculty that is very important, which is a function of the mind, is one is cognition, second is emotion, the thinking, feeling, and willing. So when we come to feeling, we call it emotions. So the emotional side of man, which we cannot ignore. No human being is without emotion. Some people may be more emotional, some people may be less emotional, but you can't say a person has absolutely no emotions. Fear, love, attraction, there are so many emotions. And then there are anxiety, there are so many emotions, or anger. So these are emotions which we encounter daily. And some kind of training results in emotional development, just as we need cognitive development to make ourselves rationally competent to process the data that we see around us and use it for our benefit. We similarly need a lot of emotional control, otherwise our personalities will be imbalanced. As you see, there are so many emotional disorders which come under the mental disorder, so many problems that human beings face. Most of them can be traced to, you may say, undeveloped emotions which are let loose. When you cannot control your emotions, there is an imbalance in our life. No matter how rational we are, if our emotional faculties are not controlled and not channelized through proper channels, then it can create a havoc in our life. So Western psychologists also speak of the second faculty, which is emotion, which also develops another yoga. One is Jnana Yoga, which I'll come to that later. The second yoga, second path, I said there are four pathways to truth. One is the faculty of thinking, cognition, rational thinking, which leads to Jnana Yoga. So, Vedanta says, in Indian philosophy, it is said that you can use reason to reach the highest truth. But if you use another faculty which is also available, it's part of our human personality, human mind, which is the emotional faculty. So they found out another way, through various scriptures describe that, a path known as the path of devotion or bhakti yoga. So that is also a yoga where you use your emotions, you transmute them into something higher. Don't let emotions create havoc in your life. Refine those emotions in a disciplined way, which is known as bhakti. In fact, most of the Semitic religions are predominantly, they depend on bhakti yoga. A devotion to a particular ideal, personal God or impersonal God, whether it is Christianity, Islam, through devotion, through prayer, through some emotional attachment, not just with the mind, but with the heart. That's why we have in this Greek Orthodox tradition, they call it a prayer of the heart. They could have said prayer of the mind. We normally pray to the mind. We use thoughts to pray. But they specifically term that as prayer of the heart. Because unless the prayer that you use comes from the bottom of the heart, your emotion should be totally involved in that. All the refined emotions of the heart, if they are poured out to supplicate before a truth or the idea of God that you have, it doesn't have its necessary effect. So that's why they insist that one should pray not only with the mind but with the heart and with thy whole soul. So we have in the Bible that you pray with your mind, with your heart. What do they mean? It means the same thing, that you have to use all the faculty of the mind, focus it on what you focus it on truth or the idea of God that you have in your particular tradition, whether it's a personal God. The idea of God may change in different religions, but all are progressing towards the same truth. That is one of the important messages of Sri Ramakrishna. All paths, they lead to the same goal. Maybe they use different faculties of the mind. There is a preponderance of emotion, then you call it bhakti yoga. If there is a preponderance of thinking, then you call it Jnana Yoga. You become a theologian, you try to analyze, you try to rationally establish certain theories, spiritual theories, with evidence, of course, and then you follow that. So that is the path of Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga doesn't ask you to take any quotation or take the words of the Upanishads or the Vedas at face value. You don't have to believe in them. You have to just analyze them, use your reasoning as much as you can till you can reason no more, and then you are intuitively face to face with truth. That is how our Jnana Yoga explains how you use the faculty, rational faculty, the cognitive faculty of the mind to transcend and reach that truth. So that is Jnana Yoga. Then we have the second faculty, I repeat, that is Bhakti Yoga, where you direct all your emotional faculties, whatever emotional capacity you have, transmute them into something noble, which we call as devotion to the personal God or the ideal that you follow, and then reach the same truth. So that is another pathway to truth, using your emotions. Then the third faculty, according to modern Western psychology and also Indian psychology, is the power to convert ideas into action, which is known as willpower. It is also known as conation. So you may have some wonderful ideas, but these ideas, those ideas, if they are frozen ideas in your brain, no doubt they may be very noble ideas and you go on speaking about them. But if you don't convert them into action, then you are not using your willpower. So that is why the third faculty of the human mind, which is very important, is to translate all the ideas, noble ideas you have, into definite action. So that is known as karma yoga. In Indian philosophy, it is known as karma yoga. You use that faculty of the mind, which is known as the willpower. You just don't say, I have wonderful ideas. I may have thousands of wonderful ideas. I may even write a book. But when it comes to practice, if I don't use those ideas and convert them into actions which will support those ideas, then you are not doing karma yoga. The willpower is not used, that faculty of the mind. I may sit in one place and imagine that I am as great as Buddha. That is why Swami Vivekananda said Buddha is one of the greatest karma yogis, because he just did not give ideas. No doubt he gave wonderful ideas through his Dhammapada. If you see the wonderful theoretical ideas, but every one of those ideas he practiced. Every time he gave some idea, he spoke of non-violence, he spoke of non-killing, not harming others. And actually he almost went to the extreme, he took an extreme decision of sacrificing his life for an animal. Because somebody wanted to kill, then he said, what will you gain by killing this animal? So he was told that if it makes you happy, then why just spare that animal, that goat, or you can kill me. So it's not just a theory that one should be non-violent or one should be compassionate towards being that he preached, but he had the will to practice it in his own life. That gave power to his words. So that is why Sri Ramakrishna, if you read Swami Vivekananda's wonderful comments that he made on Sri Ramakrishna's life, what made his life great? He says, when you talk of these great prophets who have moved the world, what gave them power? They did not speak difficult philosophy. There are hundreds and hundreds of academicians who write wonderful books, very convincing books on philosophy, but they don't create any impact in the world. He says, why don't they create that impact? Because the will is not connected. The power of prana, or the force of the soul, that is why Jesus says, in the Bible it is said that pray to God with thy whole mind, with thy whole heart, and with thy whole soul. When it says pray with your soul, means pray with using all the willpower that your mind has, and try to make that prayer real. Otherwise, if the willpower is not used to convert those ideas into definite action, then that faculty of the mind is not developed. So a third pathway was found in Indian psychology of yoga, which was known as karma yoga. Karma yoga helps you to do small actions which lead to higher and greater actions, and in the process it develops a power of your will. So will is another power, just as thinking. You have to develop your thinking power through one yoga, that is Jnana Yoga. Develop the power of emotions through Bhakti Yoga. Develop your will. He says these great prophets, whose words mean so much to so many people all over the world, they had tremendous will. If you see Swami Vivekananda is speaking in Raj Yoga, that is another yoga. I'll come to that fourth pathway later on. But in his talk, in his explanation, in his preface to the Raj Yoga, he says, these prophets, these great teachers of the world, possessed gigantic willpower. So that faculty cannot be ignored. Karma Yoga cannot be ignored. That's why he said Sri Krishna, who was always active. We can't see Krishna even at the age of 100 almost. He was so active, always active. So he was a great karma yogi, but Swami Vivekananda says even Buddha was one of the greatest karma yogi, because whatever he believed, he just decided and used his willpower. His willpower was so strong that he immediately put into practice what he believed to be true, what he rationally explained to be true. He didn't just give it out as a idea which others have to work out. He himself worked out. And that's why he says in his Raj Yoga that the spoken word was full of that developed willpower which was attached to those spoken ideas, spoken word, that gives the word tremendous power. So willpower is through Karma Yoga, which is the third path, I'll come to that, develops that faculty of the mind which converts ideas and emotions into powerful forces that change the world. So what Jesus said, what Buddha said, they all spoke in simple parables. They didn't expound theology or philosophy. They were neither professors, neither they went to college. None of them had academic excellence. They were rational, no doubt. Swami Vivekananda says Buddha was the most rational among all the great teachers of the world, because he did not even accept anything on face value. He says you don't even have to accept the idea of God. You don't even need a God. If you are rational and if you follow reason till the last moment of your life, you will reach the truth or nirvana. As he said, you just have to be rational. Try to analyze, why are you suffering from this misery? He says, why do you want to bother? He didn't want to enter into a discussion about the existence or of non-existence of God. People sometimes say that he was an atheist because he did not believe in God. That's not so. He said it's useless to argue about the existence and non-existence of God when there is a more pressing, more immediate problem, that is human misery. There is a problem, there is misery in this life, there is suffering in this life, and I have found out a way to get rid of this misery. And that if you follow in a very scientific way, in a very rational way, Buddha says you will be achieving the goal of life, you will reach truth. So why do you need to bother or quarrel about my God or your God, my idea of God? He saw there were enough quarrels in the world and people are going nowhere. They are not solving the main problem, which he said is misery. There is suffering in this life. You have to accept that truth. Though there may be happiness now and then, but ultimately if you see, it is misery that we seek to remove in our life. And though we seem to succeed by doing some kind of patchwork and removing some kind of misery, for some time it again comes back. It comes back. You cannot remove misery. At least when you face death, that's the biggest, as Swami Vivekananda said, the greatest of all miseries is the very idea of death. So that is the greatest misery. But there are other miseries that come. So Buddha was more bothered and he wanted a practical solution, and his questions and his solution that he proposed were to get rid of misery, and he did it. He may have given some small parables, and he taught through stories and parables as Jesus did and as Sri Ramakrishna did in the gospel. You will find they are simple stories, but they are practical solutions. And what gives them power is the power of the will, which made these prophets not only speak these truths but live those truths in their own life. So in Bengali there is a Sri Ramakrishna used to say, Man mukh ek kara. Mane, you talk something but you have to act upon it. Emotionally get attached to that. Believe that what you are speaking is the truth. It's not just verbal communication that you indulge in. You have to believe it with your whole soul, with your whole heart. So that's why Jesus had to use these three words. If you see the gospel according to Luke and others, they say pray to God with thy mind, with thy heart and with thy soul. Why do you have to use these three faculties? He could have simply said pray with your mind. That's what we do normally when we pray. Our prayers are just prayers of the mind, which do not reach the Lord because they are just words. They have no emotion. That's why he insists, pray with your mind. Okay, with your whole mind you pray to your God in whichever way you have been taught, but also pray with your heart. That means the second yoga, Bhakti Yoga, comes. Jnana Yoga is there, where you pray with your mind, use your mind, thoughts, the power of cognition, but also you use the power of emotion. Pray with your heart, add emotion to your thoughts, then it gives the effort more power. And then finally comes the third part, which comes, which third faculty of the mind, which is willpower. When it is applied and you convert the idea and the feeling into concrete action. That is why Swami Vivekananda, when he was inspiring Indians to work for the poor of the country, India was under a very struggling under poverty when Swami Vivekananda, being one of the countries ruled by a colonial power, naturally there was a lot of poverty, so Swami Vivekananda said that you may have nationalistic ideas, you may have patriotism, but they are empty words. Do you really feel? See, he adds that. He says you may think, you may plan so many things that we for freedom, but then you need the heart to feel the suffering of others. If you feel that the people are really suffering, then you have to feel for them, and then instead of just thinking and feeling, do you have any concrete action to serve these poor people or to serve the people who are suffering in your own way? It need not be political always. Even to serve people, he says you need these three faculties. It's just thinking, noble thinking is good, feeling also is good, but what of that? This thinking and feeling, if you don't add the power of will and decide that enough is enough, this feeling I have to now convert into something concrete so that I find a solution for the misery that I am feeling, the feeling that I have for the suffering humanity, and the intellectual capacity with which I understand that these people are exploited. So do you have a plan? He said, do you have a plan? He was telling the youth. A plan where you can act upon your thoughts and feelings and have a concrete plan of action. Otherwise, they will just be ideas in your, frozen ideas and emotions in your brain which find no expression in thought, in action. So Karma Yoga is very important, and it forms an important part of both Buddha's teaching, because he believed in right living, not just right thinking. If you see, gives so much of emphasis on doing good. Just compassion is not enough. I may be compassionate towards the whole world, but does that compassion convert into real action? So he did not stop with right thinking, noble truths, but he also added right living. You have to live that. You have to serve your brothers. That is why Swami Vivekananda, when he heard Sri Ramakrishna for the first time, when he said that serving God in man, so that gave him a wonderful reconciliation between Karma Yoga, between Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga. He says, if God gives me an opportunity, I'll preach this wonderful idea of harmony of four yogas, four different paths which will lead to truth, because they complement each other. Thinking does not come in, it's not conflicting with our emotions. Thinking, feeling and willing, if they are developed together, there are four pathways that reach the same goal. But each of these faculties, independently they work in complementing each other. That is known as harmony of yoga. That is why I named this title, today's subject, Four Pathways to Truth. They are independent pathways, but according to Ramakrishna, according to Vivekananda, they believed that if God has given you four faculties, each one of us have, maybe some people are more emotional than rational, some are more rational than emotional, and some are more active. They just want to work out their ideas. For example, we had a Japanese brahmachari in our training center. He belonged to Japan, so that gives an insight into how Japanese people think and how they work. So he was shocked when he was told, it's in a lighter vein I'm telling you, he said, do I have to read Bhagavad Gita and then yoga and then Upanishads and then, he said, why so many subjects? He said, in Japan we take up one subject and then try to do it rather than study 20 subjects and do nothing. So he was very, humorously said, I am getting confused because you're asking me to read Bhakti Yoga, you're asking me to do. But what about, for in Japan, if we believe some idea is good, we just implement it and see. If it doesn't work, we reject it. So let me practice something. You are asking me to study so many subjects in 2 years. We have a very tough syllabus when we are in training center. So we have to read so many things. The idea is you get a little idea, then you read yourself. When you go back to the center, you develop your, by reading it independently. But they just give you a bird's eye view of that is the idea. But he took everything seriously. He said, if I study Bhakti Yoga, then when will I practice Karma Yoga? Let me do one thing at a time. So he was, of course, given permission to study whatever he liked. He said, I'll rather study one subject thoroughly and practice it rather than study 20 subjects and practice nothing. So that is how, in some cultures, knowledge is gained by doing rather than thinking and feeling. So Karma Yoga is important. A little karma, that's why Vivekananda said at the end of his life, he said, I have done mostly thinking, but an ounce of practice is worth 1,000 tons of talk. An ounce of practice, it's better to practice whatever little we have understood rather than go on gathering more and more knowledge. So our development should not be lopsided. That's the idea. Practicing one of the yogas to the exclusion of other, developing your rational capacity and pursuing the path of jnana, day and night thinking about Advaita is very good. That gives you a wonderful rational capacity. You can reason your way to the highest truth. But because you have other faculties, why not use them? Why not use a little bhakti? And it complements each other. People have an idea that if you are an Advaitin, a little bit of bhakti will in fact disturb your trend of thought. If you have to be an Advaitin, you have to be outright Advaitin, hardcore as they say. But Swami Vivekananda and Sri Ramakrishna completely disagreed with this idea. That's why you see even Shankaracharya, though he discussed about Jnana Yoga, his whole Advaita philosophy is Jnana Yoga, but you see he wrote some of the most wonderful hymns on a personal God, on Devi. So many compositions you will find on a personal God which is full of emotion, which will help you to, if you sing them in a proper tune, it leads to Bhakti Yoga. If Bhakti was harmful for Advaita or rational thinking, he would not have written all these songs. All the compositions, great compositions which he has written on the Divine Mother and so many, hundreds of compositions he has, devotional songs he has written, though he was himself a Advaitin. Similarly, you will find there is another great Advaitin, Madhusudan Saraswati, whose love for Krishna, personal Krishna, the God Krishna, did not come in way of his following the Advaitic philosophy. So the idea Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda gave was that all the four, I'll come to the fourth faculty. Now we have discussed only three faculties, which agrees with Western psychology. Western psychology says there are only three faculties: the power of thinking, power of feeling, power of willing. But that ends. Western psychology exhausts itself. But when I say the fourth path, which is known as Raj Yoga or Patanjali's Yoga, Indian psychology speaks of a fourth power of the mind, which is often ignored. It cannot be called a fourth power of the mind. It's a power which gives power to all these three faculties of the mind. That is, that power, the fourth power of the mind is the power of restraining the mind. Now, this is a new faculty which leads to intuition, discovered by Patanjali's yoga or the yoga philosophy, which is known as yoga, but more specifically it is known as Raj Yoga or Patanjali's yoga, whatever, because he coded all those, he collected all those sutras, ideas, which were there even much before Patanjali. Yoga is not new, Raj Yoga is not new to either Vivekananda or much before him Patanjali. Even before Patanjali, these ideas existed. The science of controlling the mind, and when the thoughts are reduced or the thoughts are controlled, they generate tremendous power. The example that Patanjali himself gives is, he says, if you allow a river to just split into various tributaries, they will lose its power. But if you somehow across the river, if you build a dam, then all the water that would have been wasted by flowing through tributaries, which would decrease the pressure of the water, if you store it, if you build a dam across the river, the water level rises and it has the potential to generate tremendous energy. So that is the idea, the fourth power that India discovered, which was known as Patanjali's yoga, also known as Raj Yoga, where they say that if all the turbulent thoughts or all the thoughts that are bubbling up in the mind, somehow by some technique, by using the 8 steps, yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, by steadiness of the body, steadiness of the mind, controlling the mind, if you somehow control these thoughts which are random, which are dissipated, they are dissipated if you allow them to just flow randomly. But they say if you just try to control them, just as the rays of the sun, another example that is given, though I don't know how they did not have the lens in those days, maybe they had discovered that the concentrated rays of the sun, if it falls on a particular point, it generates tremendous energy, because all the waves, instead of being diversified, they just are focused on one particular point because of the lens. Then so all the thoughts, if they are focused on a particular point, a particular object, so there we come to the great science of meditation. Meditation is something, an extension of the Bhakti Yoga, where most of the traditions, they believe in prayer. So prayer also is a kind of meditation. In fact, in our Vedas, we had the Gayatri Mantra, which was a prayer. Gayatri Mantra is not a mantra which is used for meditation. It's a prayer which is used for meditation. Because in the prayer, in the particular prayer, just as there are other prayers in the Christian tradition, also there is this meditation which is a result of intense prayer. For example, they say, "Oh Lord Jesus, have mercy upon me." They go on repeating it. Now we come to this fourth yoga, which is known as Raj Yoga, which gets its power or gets its an independent path because of the repetitive nature of prayer. So this repetitive nature was emphasized in Greek tradition, where you simply repeat this prayer of the heart. Also, there are so many wonderful prayers. So in India, there was this Gayatri Mantra, which was almost mandatory for every child between the age of 6 and 8. They were wise enough to know that if this fourth power of the mind is not cultivated, that human being is not going to be useful to the world. He will not be able to make the right choices. He will not be able to develop the power of intuition. So when you control the mind, what happens is, through meditation, the force that is generated by this concentrated mind, Patanjali discusses it in the 3rd chapter also. He talks of samyama. When the samyama is used, you can excel in any field. To be a good footballer, you need concentration. To become a good scientist, you need concentration. Any field that you in which you want to make success, you need the power of concentration. So they understood it. Even for secular professional excellence, you need concentration. So for spiritual progress, definitely you need concentration all the more. Because without a concentrated mind, they found it is impossible to make progress. So that is why this power of repetition of certain prayers, like Gayatri Mantra, which was mandatory for children, along with all their skills that they develop, intellectual skills, emotional skills, karma yoga, all the skills, they said no, that is not enough. You should repeat this mantra, and not only boys, even girls and all castes. Somehow it became a privilege of certain castes, Gayatri Mantra, because the Indian religion became very ritualistic and became the monopoly of some sections of society. But no caste was prohibited with the Vedas. In fact, this Gayatri Mantra was so popular that repetition of the Gayatri Mantra, which is nothing but Raj Yoga. There you use prayer as a meditation. You meditate on the sun, the light of the sun, so that the ignorance within is destroyed and the light of the sun guides you, makes your intellect sharp, and your intuitive power develops so that you can make right choices in life. You have wisdom, you may have skills, you may have intelligence, but if you don't have wisdom, which is a result of Raj Yoga or repetition of or meditation, meditation was the fourth power of the mind. By restraining thoughts, they discovered that there is another faculty of the mind which we hardly use, which we don't train our children to use, which makes us miserable because of a lack of concentrated effort. We don't succeed in our other professions or anything that we take up. We don't succeed because there is this lack of concentration. Now there is so much of distraction, digital distraction, there are so many new distractions, and ADHD and so many new things which younger people never faced in earlier generations. That is because of the distraction has increased, and there is no attempt which ought to be in fact Gayatri was to be given between the age of 6 and 8. It's something which was mandatory for a child who goes to acquire secular learning, because no secular learning would be of any use if he doesn't have the wisdom to use what he has learnt in school or college for a right purpose. His life can be miserable. So this faculty, the fourth yoga, the fourth path to truth, was given equal importance, but it was Swami Vivekananda who decided. That is why the only book he wrote, all his other talks and letters and lectures are compiled from his various talks. But before leaving England, he wanted to write a book, and the topic he chose was Raj Yoga. He dictated, he told his disciples to take down word by word. He used to meditate a lot and tried to explain with a wonderful introduction what Patanjali's yoga is really. He says, this is my gift to the world, because he did not want to go back from the West without giving a concrete book, a very systematic book, which is one of the best books, the only book perhaps which he has written. He dictated, and it was published during his lifetime, both in London as well as in New York simultaneously. So his disciples, he said, see, before I die, before I leave this country, I want to give to the Western world. The other three yogas are compiled. He gave Jnana Yoga lectures mostly in London, in Piccadilly. So all those lectures have been compiled into this wonderful book known as Jnana Yoga. He spoke on Karma Yoga in New York. He gave so many talks there, class that has been compiled into Karma Yoga. Then Bhakti Yoga, he gave a series of talks both in America and England. So we get all the three yogas, which are just compilations. But this book, Yoga, he felt that this is such a serious topic, the fourth path, the faculty which was ignored. And he said, this is India's greatest contribution. That is why when we refer to yoga, we mean Patanjali's yoga. But in a loose sense, we use Bhakti Yoga, we use Karma Yoga, because all these are used. Raj Yoga is the main yoga which complements not only Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, because even to acquire Jnana, knowledge, to acquire devotion, to develop devotion, and to do work skillfully, you need concentration. So that is why he gave the name Raj Yoga. Raj Yoga means the king of yogas. Other three yogas are important, but he says without concentration, without proper focus, you will not succeed in anything. Not only spirituality, but you will not even succeed in your professional life. Everywhere, anything that great has been done is a result of this Raj Yoga. Consciously or unconsciously, concentration was developed either in the laboratory or in the colleges, in the academic world. And because of that concentration, people have succeeded in whatever they have done, even in sports. So it is this Raj Yoga, which he believed is the king of all yogas. That is why the word Raja means king in Sanskrit. So he says this is the king of all yogas. This will help us to develop the other three faculties or use the other three faculties when they are developed and give it a proper direction so that we can reach the goal of life. So these are the four pathways. So I'll conclude now. Four pathways to truth, which are known by the four words Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Raj Yoga and Karma Yoga. So all the four faculties, the human personality or the human mind, which is an important aspect of our personality. We are what our minds are. Buddha said, our thoughts are what make us. As you think, so you become. So a lot of importance is given in Buddhism, and every religion gives a lot of importance to the cultivation of the mind. When you say cultivation of the mind, you mean cultivation of the four faculties of the mind. 3 plus 1, which combines all the three. And these four faculties are the four pathways which develop our personality, not only for secular success, for professional success. That is part of our journey, but that's not the end of our journey. Our journey is completed only when we use these four faculties to develop our spiritual potential and reach truth. So we will conclude now. If there are questions.
Any questions for Swamiji? That was truly wonderful.
Yeah.
You mentioned about the willpower. So I just wanted to ask.
You give that. You just have to press it.
So there was a you mentioned about the willpower, which is very important. Is there a way that this can be developed?
Yeah, true. Yeah. So the question is, I'm recording it, that's why. So the question is, which is being asked, is that, is there a way to develop the willpower? Now I said the yoga of developing willpower is known as Karma Yoga. So will is developed only through action. So we may have good thoughts, we may have noble intentions, but the road to failure, is paved with good intentions. So we have just good intentions, but we fail because we don't convert those intentions into concrete actions. So the moment, as I said, this Japanese brahmachari, he had one idea, he just wanted to put it into practice. So he just had a noble thought, he had some feeling, maybe emotionally he was impressed by this thought, and he wanted to see whether it is really, it can be converted into a concrete action. So once that is done, your willpower is developed slowly. So it's only through action. So Karma Yoga is the only way. Otherwise, willpower doesn't develop. So doing. Nowadays, there are a lot of schools which teach by doing rather than learning. Learning is given, you do and then learn. Thinking comes automatically. So if you do something, it increases your willpower, your power of reasoning simultaneously, and also power of emotion. Yeah.
Yes, please pass the mic.
Pranam Maharaj, I've got a couple of questions since I have the mic, and I'll ask both of them. Firstly, on the point you made about the Japanese Swami, do you think even for householder devotees like ourselves, particularly when it comes to reading spiritual texts, do you think it's perhaps far more important to go deep rather than going wide?
Yeah, that is. No, I was talking in lighter vein because I was just talking about the different tendencies. Some are predominantly work oriented. Some cultures, they are workaholics. That's why Japan succeeded so much. They just work, work, work. Their way of striking also is by working more rather than not going to work. That's how Japanese people strike. When they in the companies they want to prove a point, they'll say we'll not stop work, we'll work more. So that I'm just talking of a particular tendency in different cultures. They are focused more on developing the willpower. So they understand things. If you tell them this is you have to act. If you tell them something about spirituality, they will immediately ask you how to practice this. Said I had enough of ideas, theories. So in that context I said, so how you practice it, that is your choice. I mean, which one to take up, but it would definitely, Karma Yoga is very important, because the power of will, if it is not developed, then there cannot be spiritual progress. As I said, these great prophets, Vivekananda says, were great Karma Yogis because they practiced everything that they preached. That gave them tremendous power. That's why people listen even today to Jesus, to Buddha, to Ramakrishna, to Vivekananda. Why do we listen? Because their words had the power of thinking, power of feeling, power of willing, and the power of concentration, obviously. So their words were packed with power, and their actions, they lived and they practiced what they preached. So that, as some Mahatma Gandhi also once said, my life is my message. So life, if it is your message, you give a message, but then you have to live it. So when you live it, it becomes Karma Yoga. It develops the will. So doing is very good, because having less to think and feel and more to do is the Japanese way. As I said, maybe they prefer that. But for each one we have to make a choice, how much to read, how much to read, and till, because you see, after a certain reading, you have to somehow put a break to the reading, because you go on reading all your life and end up not practicing anything. It's better you take up some reading and just focus on what you have read and see whether it works. Otherwise you will be a like they say, master of none, jack of all trades, master of none.
So on the second question, and I promise it will be brief. On the point of unconditional love for God, you were mentioning about unconditional love for God. Does that also mean we should also see hardship and suffering as a divine gift? If I have unconditional love for Thakur.
Yeah. Unconditional means that. If you say, God, if you help me getting what I want, then I'll have devotion to you, then that is conditional love.
Yeah.
It's transactional love, isn't it? So when you say unconditional love, it means that. Jesus Christ did not criticize his Father in heaven when he was crucified. He could have said, you could not even prevent me from getting crucified, so I don't believe in. But he praised his Father in God. He said that is his will. Thy will be done. As in heaven, so on earth. So if it is his will, and then you can't say conditionally, if you help me, then I'll pray to you. Then it's a business transaction.
Thank you.
Any other question? Yes. Do you want to pass?
Thank you for the session. I wanted to know, these are the four pathways
Yeah.
of spirituality. Is there anything which says one is better than the other? And
Yeah.
the second thing is, it is very difficult for a person to inculcate all the four pathways. And is there a systematic way that, I don't know whether we can start doing that, but at least we can teach our children to have that systematic way of
Yeah.
at least attaining some level of the four pathways.
Yeah. Now, as I said, there are these four pathways, but as I said, all are equally not rational. Some people have more of devotion or emotion than reasoning power. Some are more active, some are less active. So those who are less active, they can develop this karma yoga by becoming more active. That's the idea. So all do not have all the capacities equal. Some people just don't want to think. They are not capable of dealing with philosophy. So what happens is, in their case, it would be better if they just use a little bit of devotion, if they have this feeling for, and have some simple faith and pursue. So it's not necessary that you follow all the four paths. They can be, as Vivekananda said, you can follow 1, 2, 3 or all the four. So it's not necessary that all the four can be practiced. And as far as time is concerned, yes, all of us have limitations. But if you see that all the paths, whether we want it or not, we have these faculties, and it is possible to practice all simultaneously. For example, I'll give you, if you have devotion to a particular aspect of God, then if you rationally think about his different aspects of that particular God, because you attribute greatness to your Ishta because of certain qualities. For example, Krishna, he has some qualities which you like. So you can use your reasoning to find out why you love your Ishta or why you love Buddha, because of certain things that he did. So that involves thinking. You may think that I don't need to think about what he did. If I just have devotion to Buddha, that would be enough. But it is better to know, because if you have the element of curiosity or the rational faculty in you, then why not use it? That's the idea. And it doesn't come in way of your devotion. If you read about your Ishta, or if the God whom you worship, if you read about again and again, if you read the Bible or the Upanishads or Bhagavad Gita, your devotion for Krishna will not be less. You still will be emotionally attached to him. But at the same time, you'll know more about him. The more you know about him, the more you have knowledge about that person or that God or that deity or avatar or prophet, the more your devotion will increase. So they complement each other. And then karma yoga is more important because it develops the willpower. So now and then you have to show through your actions that your devotion really means something. So that is why we have so many rituals. Rituals actually, it doesn't have any meaning if you don't take it as karma yoga. You have to do these rituals with full of devotion, not because it has to be done and just get rid of it, just do it somehow, pay the priest something and he does it on your behalf, and then you think the ritual is done. No, if the value of the ritual is to develop that willpower, if say for example you sit for 3 hours, normally you are not able to sit for 3 hours. You use all your willpower to do a particular puja. You have devotion, you have knowledge of what you are doing. Obviously you should have knowledge. Otherwise, if you do it just as a ritual, then it won't help. So you should be conscious of what ritual, at least some of the basic basic ideas behind that ritual, because all rituals have a significance behind them. So if you know about that, then it becomes Jnana Yoga. Then if you do it with devotion, not depending on some person to do it for you and you get all the credit, that is never going to happen. So these rituals are meant to increase our willpower. So it is only the pujari who is going to get help, benefit. People think we pay the pujari, he does something and we go to heaven. It never happens. That may be priestcraft, but it doesn't happen. Nobody can, if it's just like saying, I will eat and you will get nourished. That doesn't happen. You have to eat yourself. So all the pujas, rituals were done because that is why they are known as karma kanda. So karma yoga, by doing that, your willpower increases. You have to take the effort to, that's why all the places of pilgrimage, you have to walk. Now they are protesting because now ropeways are there. It's not a tourist place. You have to walk, struggle, and increase your willpower to reach the top. Then that gives you not only devotion, you are taking so much effort. Most of the holy places are on hilltops, because people should increase their willpower by going there. And if you just go and take a helicopter and just spend money and think that you will get some religious merit, that doesn't happen. So karma yoga is also necessary, and all yogas, if you see, are connected to each other. So you don't have to spend 10 minutes for karma yoga, 10 minutes. In 10 minutes you can do all the 4 yogas. Whatever time you have or one person has, all the 4 yogas come automatically if you do it in a proper way.
Swamiji, I have one question.
Mm-hmm.
When disciples used to come and... Oh, sorry, I'll use the mic. When disciples used to come and ask Ma and Thakur that they can't focus when they're doing job, and Ma used to say, just keep, even if you're doing the job mechanically, just keep doing it.
Yes.
And then a time will come
Oh,
when
yes,
you'll focus. Is that invoking?
Yeah, this is a very important thing. Today morning we were discussing this. The power of repetition. You see, Raj Yoga, the only technique that is most important in Raj Yoga is the power of repetition. So some traditions gave a lot of importance, especially in the Hindu tradition. There is this idea of Nam Japa, where all the 4 yogas are combined. The Raj Yoga comes automatically because when you repeat a certain thing, it is, you see, this word habit, Vivekananda says in his Karma Yoga, he says, the only thing that matters is habit. We are what our habits are. It may look as a trivial statement, but it is very important. The word habit itself, coincidentally, is a wonderful word, Habit. I don't know whether it's a coincidence or the habit is something which stays with you. Yeah, we do it once, it doesn't become a habit. You do it 10 times, it becomes a habit. If you do it 50 times, it becomes a stronger habit. Then you know how difficult it is to get rid of it. So bad habits also. You smoke once, it's okay. But if you smoke 100 times, then it becomes difficult to get rid. So good habits also has a wonderful impact on us. That's why repetition of the mantra, whether you do it consciously, whether you do it with devotion, or whether you do it with full knowledge of what that mantra means, in either case, it's just like any other habit. So any habit, that is why this mother says, Holy Mother says, Japat Siddhi. Now what happens is, this word habit, I don't know who coined this word. It has come from Latin, obviously, but they say in this word habit, if you remove H, what remains? A bit. A bit still remains. If you remove A, still the bit remains. And even if you remove the B, it remains. So habits are difficult to remove, to get away with. Isn't it? Habit. See, H you remove, a bit remains. So under no circumstance a habit can be easily got rid of. And that applies to bad habits and good habits. So why not have good habits? That's the simplest logic, and Holy Mother did not want to complicate things. She said, just make good habits. We have made so many bad habits, nobody asked us to do it. And now we complain that we have to get rid of it. And we can't get rid of it, but if we make good habits, then that stays.
One question. For an emotional
For
For an emotional person, so my question is, for an emotional person, what is the best way to practice the restraining of the mind or controlling of the mind so that it doesn't...
No, for an emotional person,
who is
the best way is Bhakti Yoga. First he has to direct those emotions through a proper channel and refine it. Then emotions will not. Emotions are not bad. Emotional person need not be emotional when we are saying that emotions disturb you. It's only bad emotions that disturb, like bad emotions like fear, anger.
Yeah.
But the same emotions, if you direct it towards God, Thakur used to say, "Mod firiye jao." When you just change the direction, then the same bad emotions become good. If you are angry, be angry with God that He doesn't help you or reveal you. Don't be angry on people, then they'll hurt you. But if you get angry on God, Sri Ramakrishna used to say, you have full right to be angry on God, not because He doesn't help you. Because God will not take revenge. God is the only person who will not. Otherwise, if you are angry on XYZ, you will get something back. So you don't have to fear God. You direct all your fear, all the emotions, they can be transmuted. Then once when the emotions are refined, then Raj Yoga or power of concentration. And even that emotion will help you to concentrate. That emotion itself will help you to concentrate more. Because suppose somebody has a very strong emotion, say for example, is very attached. Tulsidas's example is the excellent idea, excellent example of how emotion, the same emotion which was almost going to kill him, changed him into a great lover of Rama. In one incident, you know that idea, the incident of Tulsidas, you know? If people who don't know, Tulsidas had an emotion, of course, as every one of us have. He was very much attached to his wife. So much so that it was inordinate. I mean, nobody is so much attached. He was so much, he could not live without her. That's bad emotion, obviously. And that was giving lot of trouble to him. And he would not even let her go to her father's house. That's how the story goes. I don't know how much. So he said, no, you can't go. And then he said, okay, if you go, come back immediately. So that kind of person, he was not a saint when he, but how the same emotional person became such a great saint. So when his wife went, he felt, he was so emotionally attached that he crossed a turbulent river, jumping on a corpse which somehow took him. Somehow he survived, went there with dirty clothes, knocked his wife's door there, and she was shocked to see this fellow coming after her to her father's house. She just wanted peace. Wanted to be quiet. And when he reached there, she curses him. You see how the transformation took place. The same Tulsidas, who was not Tulsidas at that time. She just scolded him, saying, if you had the same attachment and emotional attachment to Rama, you would have become a saint. Why are you so much attached to me? So that, it was like a slap on his face. Though she said it out of disgust, she perhaps did not want him to renounce and go. It came as a slap on his face. He immediately left and never went back to his wife. He just became a great devotee. So emotion was bad. But when it was directed to God, it can completely change. Then for everything came. He was totally concentrated on Rama. After that, he wrote the Tulsi Ramayana. So emotions are not bad. Where it is directed, that is the issue.
Any other final question? You've got one.
Or maybe anyone else has any questions? Yes. Okay, the much what let's let him do first.
But you can take this one.
Pranamaji, so my question is, how do we know that we are advancing through these, the 4 stages that you mentioned about? So, for example, Jnana Yoga, I know that maybe we can, read more and understand more and maybe practice that. But
No, Jnana Yoga, reading more.
Jnana Yoga. So, I think Jnana Yoga would be, you get more knowledge out of.
You see, more knowledge and right knowledge are totally different. According to Jnana Yoga itself, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana is there. Shravana means to listen. The more you listen, the more knowledge you have. And that's the popular idea of a well-read person or a well-informed person. He knows many things. It works in secular field, but in spiritual field, that is not progress. Progress is only when you do Nididhyasana. First you do Shravana, listen, but you listen to limited things. You don't go on listening. If you spend your whole time listening or understanding or reading, then there is hardly anything to meditate upon. So second stage is manana. That is according to Gyan Yoga only I am telling. So you do manana, you read and try to find out what is the essence of what I have read. And then having determined the essence, you go to the nididhyasana, you meditate and try to get an intuitive understanding of the knowledge that you have read. That is Gyan Yoga. So Gyan Yoga is not easy or not even, see, we can't judge by the amount of books or the amount of knowledge I have. I may have infinite knowledge, but how much of that is intuitive knowledge? Intuitive knowledge is given importance in Gyan Yoga, not academic knowledge or not theoretical knowledge. Theoretical knowledge one can have. One can be a PhD in philosophy. He is not progressing. He may be more, in fact, less. There may be people who, like Sri Ramakrishna, for example, he never went to school. But do you mean to say, so Vivekananda says he was the greatest Gyanis, because he says to know intuitively truth is knowledge, all others is ignorance. So from that point of view, we cannot judge how much progress we have made unless we intuitively develop a conviction on whatever we have read, whatever knowledge we had. We have meditated on it long enough, nididhyasana, and then some truth we arrive at intuitively. That is known as the flash of realization. So that is how you judge. In Bhakti Yoga, you can judge by how much of unconditional love you have. If it is still conditional, that means you have not made progress. If you are angry with God because He doesn't give you what you want, that is definitely, it is devotion, but definitely at a lower level. So nothing is wrong, but we travel from lesser truth to higher truth. So if your love is becoming unconditional, even in bad circumstances, even in misery, you still hold on to God. That means your devotion is, you are progressing. Like Kunti, for example. Kunti was the mother of Pandavas, and also she suffered all her life. Husband died and then children went away to the forest. So all her life she was suffering, but she was always praying to Krishna that don't remove sufferings from my life, because the moment you make me happy, I forget you. So you see what kind of devotion she had. She says, as long as I am miserable, I remember you. So let me remember you and be happy rather than get rid of misery. So that is the highest love. So that is the highest. So that then you can know that you don't depend on misery or happiness for your devotion. It's unconditional love.
Thank you very much.
Ranjita?
Maharaj, this is first one is not a question, Maharaj, but we have heard about these four yogas for quite some time now.
Use that one. This man wasn't meant for that.
Yeah, I can hear.
So Maharaj, what I was saying, and that the four yogas that we have been, hearing about this for quite some time, but the way you have explained today is amazing. It's thinking, then feeling, then willing. So three different faculties of mind, and then finally how the fourth faculty of mind, which is the power of concentration and meditation, that is flowing to these three faculty of mind. It is something that will never, actually I'll never forget the way you explained. Thank you so much for this. It brings a lot of clarity to those these four yogas that we have been thinking. I was always having a doubt about Raj Yoga, the why it is meant for, but now it is much clear. But on that one, the question that I have, this power of concentration is very much getting impacted by the distractions.
Yes.
The more you get distracted, the concentration is going to be lower. It's basically inversely proportional the way it works. Now, in the current digital age, when this device is a part and parcel of our life, without a mobile device, we can't, live. That is how it is. Everything is there, starting from banking to our office, and everything is there. So, what is your advice to the current generation or to all of us to just still, focus and have the concentration without getting distracted by this device which was not there,
No, I don't think digital devices have created problems. How we use it has created problems. So distraction was there even earlier. People were distracted by other things. Now mobile has a greater share of distraction, provided you allow yourself to get distracted. In fact, it saves time. If you use it wisely, you don't have to remember numbers, you can message, you don't have to write letters, spend postage and wait for so many days to get a reply, just send an email. So it has saved you a lot of time. So it has helped you, if you use the time wisely, to get rid of many distractions and get more time for a meditation, creative purpose. So I don't see any distraction. If you allow yourself, if you social media and other things, then that's a misuse. So that is the misuse of technology everywhere. Nuclear energy also can be used or misused. It can be used for generating power, it can be used for bombs. So technology has a double-edged sword. It works both ways. So technology has not caused distraction. Technology, in fact, has always tried to reduce our manual labor. Manual labor in the sense, things which we could not imagine. Talking, we had to book a trunk call, I still remember. Many of you who have been born before the mobile age, how difficult it was to communicate. Now the same thing, in 2 minutes you communicate, but if provided you after that you give up the device and then focus on meditation. Otherwise, half an hour you would have wasted, isn't it? To just book a call. And so digital, how you make use of digital technology is important, rather than its misuse is not good, but use is good. It can do so many things now. People sitting somewhere can listen. Otherwise you have to travel and go, and so at least something is better. Of course, it doesn't give you as much impact as a live listening, but still something is better than nothing. They can hear. So I don't think digital, in fact, I think many of the inventions which were designed originally to make our tasks easier and save time. See, 90% of the inventions are to make things easily, faster, quicker and more efficiently. If that purpose is kept in mind, then it should be okay. That's why Swamiji says in the future, more people will be born as yogis. I don't know when it will come true, but because maybe they will be disgusted with this digital things, misuse of digital things, and then they will decide not to use it and use all the spare time they get for yoga. So the opposite also may be true. We don't know.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that was a very inspirational and educational